Good morning. This is Dylan Jovine from Behind the Markets. Happy Tuesday. Today is November 26th, just a couple of days away from Thanksgiving and all that dysfunction at the family dinner table. Anyway, today I wanted to talk about something very important. Word came out that President-elect Trump was considering two people for Deputy Secretary of Defense. One of them is Trey Stevens, who's a partner at Peter Thiel's Founders Fund VC firm and one of the first employees at Palantir. Very important. He also, by the way, invested in Anduril. The other person he's considering for Deputy Secretary of Defense is billionaire investor Stephen Feinberg, who's one of the big shots over at Cerberus, another kind of private equity firm that's invested in a lot of defense companies. And the Deputy Secretary of Defense is very important. I was so happy to hear this news because the Deputy Secretary of Defense he runs the day-to-day operations of the Pentagon, and he has control over budget and finance. Now, this is very important because remember what we are trying to do here as a country, as a military, what the Pentagon's trying to do. The Pentagon is trying to change how we fight wars to really reflect the fourth revolution in warfare. And they talk about three revolutions that happened before this. One of them was machine guns, automatic weapons. Second one was tanks. The third one was precision smart bombs. And now we're moving into the AI revolution of warfare. And this is such a very important, I cannot emphasize enough for the safety and security of our country, how important this position is, Deputy Secretary of Defense. Basically, what's happened is countries like China, they didn't have a big military. So they basically got to build their military from scratch over the past 15 years and basically say, okay, what do we want? Do we want a military? We look at America, we see they have tanks and mass formation equipment. How can we penetrate that? So they created a distributed warfare kind of network. They were able to build their military. By contrast, our military is basically still based on the foundations that it was built on post-World War II. We still fight like we did after World War II. Basically, certainly with tank warfare, we're still fighting very much like the Germans fought when they invaded France, just mass formation and movement of heavy armor. And that's not the way it's going to work anymore. Basically, we have a challenge. China's unique challenge was they had to build a military over the past 15, 20 years that could really take on and exploit America's weakness. America's main challenge right now is that we have to support our existing military while also minding the gap between where we are and where we want to be to really bring in this fourth revolution of warfare right into our military. So we have to start replacing some of these legacy weapon programs. And then what do you replace them with? So I am very happy. This is telegraphing to investors like me, and it should be telegraphing to all Americans, basically, that Trump is continuing that work that he did in the first term when he had Jim Mattis as Secretary of Defense, who really talked about this fourth revolution in warfare, really with Project Overmatch and all these other types of very exciting things. My personal preference is for Trey Stevens. Again, one of the early employees of Palantir, invested in Anduril, Palmer Luckey's company. These guys really understand it. So what I'm hoping happens is that you get a guy, either that would be good. My personal preference is Trey Stevens. That you get a guy in there where they start moving the tap from these old legacy programs to this fourth revolution program. Again, weaponizing everything. And that means drones. That means AI. It means swarm warfare. Again, a way to think about this is this way. For the last 50 years, we would move a bunch of tanks over, big tanks that can now just get picked apart by drones. And let's say we pointed 5 tanks, all pointed at one enemy, and then started shooting. Now replace those 5 tanks with 1,000 drones. Now, every time a missile comes in to shoot down this drone swarm, all the drones will just disperse and then come back together. They could also have firepower. They could point all of their little guns in one direction and give you the firepower of 5 tanks. Basically, we are now moving into swarm warfare, which means smaller munitions, distributed munitions, that can move like a beehive, basically, or an ant hive. And this is all powered by AI. It is all powered by companies like Palantir and Anduril and all these companies that we've talking about, on and on. We've obviously covered this with some of our special reports. Keep your eye out for it, but this is very important stuff. One of the things that has concerned me is we hear about these military tribunals that Trump is going to get rid of generals. And I think to myself, geez, that didn't work too well for Stalin. When Stalin got rid of a bunch of top generals, Germany just went in there and cut through Russia like a hot knife through butter. I get a little bit like, yikes, that's not a good sign, because if our enemies, our opponents see us get rid of a bunch of top generals, they're going to just say, oh, this is our time to party. So that's given me some concern. But when you see people like this being talked about for Deputy Secretary of Defense, that is a very good sign. It tells us that the Trump administration is telegraphing they understand what time it is. They understand how important this is, and they were going to do what they have to push us to really modernize our Pentagon and our military and our fighting forces. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Have a wonderful day.